Hello and welcome to our Explainer series. Tonight we're going to explore the concept of sound basic education. It's really fundamental to the essence of what education here is in the state of North Carolina. Now, our Explainer series are designed to make the very complex, easy to understand, and digestible in just 10 minutes. These concepts, we hope, are going to help you make better decisions when it comes to voting for school board members, certainly, even county commissioners, sheriffs, state reps, and of course, judges. Judges are going to be very, very important. They're critical factors, and you'll see that tonight on this 10-minute explainer. Sound basic education. The term sound basic education is bandied about frequently in the media, but what is it? Is it a political opinion? Is it a law? Is it a constitutional issue? What is it? Well, it's actually a little bit of all three. So to begin with, there's no federal right to an education per se, but in North Carolina, there is a right. Our state constitution, it says this: the people have a right to the privilege of an education, and it is the duty of the state to guard and maintain that right. The Constitution also says that education is encouraged by the state because, and I'm quoting here, religion, morality, and knowledge being necessary to good government and the happiness of mankind, schools, libraries, and the means of education shall be encouraged. Now, the General Assembly is chiefly responsible for providing this education to the citizenry, and under the Constitution is given the authority to tax citizens to pay for this education. Now, of course, we know that the General Assembly has delegated the responsibility for education to the state board, as well as to the Department of Public Instruction, which is led by an elected official, and that would be the state superintendent. So now we know education is a right guaranteed, but what kind of education? I mean, until the 90s, this was nothing more than words on paper. In 1997, the Supreme Court in the state answered the question, what is education here? It came up with this doctrine called sound basic education. It's a qualitative measure of the state's education system. Now, in this landmark Leander decision, a sound basic education was meant to involve pre-K through 12, and it should impart on students the ability to read, write, speak English, do basic math. Sound basic education should also, the court said, impart on students a basic knowledge of geography, history, economics, political science, so that when people graduated from high school, they could make sound decisions for their families, for their community, and for their country. Finally, the court said a sound basic education should impart on students upon graduation the basic skills they need, an academic acumen to pursue whatever vocation they want. In other words, a sound basic education, listen up, should equip every citizen with the knowledge and skills they need to attain life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness in any way they see fit. Okay, 2020, the concept of sound basic education changed again with another judge in the Leander case. The state now is tasked with providing a very expanded view of sound basic education. And importantly, the judge in this case used this as a pretext to force the General Assembly to pony up $1.7 billion for this expanded version of sound basic education. Now, under current law, here's what it includes: teacher development and recruitment that puts a high quality teacher in every classroom, a system of principal development and recruitment, also a financial system that provides adequate, equitable, and predictable funding to school districts, specifically more funding for low-income districts, also a system of student performance measures across multiple facets, also a turnaround plan for low-performing schools and districts, finally a pre-K system for at-risk students. So that's now the expanded version of sound basic education. This is a constitutional right, as we've discussed, but over the years, judges and the courts have really defined the exact elements of what education means here in the state of North Carolina. Just curious, did anyone happen to catch the inclusion of social emotional learning in this paradigm of sound basic education? How about teaching queer theory or gender identity stuff. No, you did not, which is why the left-wing members on the state school board and their cheerleader, State Superintendent Catherine Truitt, maintain that the concept and the teachings of social emotional learning is for school security that will prevent school violence, and that the institution of like queer theory and gender theory in every class is also meant to keep students safe. See what they're doing here? Since these left-wing radical concepts are not constitutionally mandated, bureaucrats find another way to permanently enshrine these deeply unpopular concepts, which are now mandated in this state from the top down. Now, about school security, there is one critical way that the state Supreme Court very recently made another modification to the concept of sound basic education. This is something you have to hear. In June of 2021, the Supreme Court ruled unanimously that another element of providing a sound basic education for all students should include the prevention of severe and pervasive harassment by teachers and other students. Now, I'm not talking about calling someone the wrong pronoun or saying they can't go into the bathroom of their choice. This particular standard would only apply to cases where school administrators and school board members were outrageously derelict in their duty to take action after verified repeated incidents of harassment. So in this particular case, it involved a mom and her 3 children, 2 of which were severely autistic. These kids were subjected to, unrelenting physical abuse and sexual harassment by 4 students at a Pitt County elementary school. Now, the mom said that she constantly complained to school board members and the school leadership personnel. Eventually, school administrators said, we're going to change things. They never did. They did nothing. Now, at first, the Court of Appeals had dismissed this awful case. They said, look, Charlotte-Mecklenburg school system and the school board, they were negligent in some claims related to a teacher's sexual relationship with a high school student, and the court did nothing. So we're going to follow that. But look, thank God, Chief Judge Newby said the Court of Appeals was wrong in their decision, because it would mean that the state's constitutional guarantee of an education would only provide the very content of the education and would do nothing to actually protect a student's right to have that education. Now, here's what I'm going to point out. Judge Newby, he's a conservative judge, and you know it. You can see it from his interpretation of the Constitution. Why? Because Judge Newby's ruling here actually extends the liberty of citizens, in this case, K through 12 students, without placing an undue burden on other citizens. Okay, so judges who sit on our state Supreme Court, extremely important in protecting every student's right to receive that sound basic education. Now, these judges also, as we can see, determine the very elements of what a sound basic education is. Do you doubt for one second that the left is going to bring a case before the court that would mandate social emotional learning and gender theory to be included in sound basic education? Don't doubt it. And you better know that the left is already planning to make the case that not allowing boys into the girls' changing rooms is somehow a constitutional infringement on students' right to access a sound basic education. Don't laugh. This is not hyperbole. When this comes, we had better have conservative judges sitting on the bench, not only of the Supreme Court, but the State Court of Appeals. So look, in November, you must protect children by voting conservative judges at every level. The future of the rights of all children to receive this sound basic education depends on it.